Hey guys, it's Psychosis here, and today I have another book review for you guys. And today it's on a book that I've been wanting to read since I have first ever got into sci-fi, seriously, and that is Tau Zero by Poul Anderson. And as you can see, I got a really cool old copy of it, and I'm amazed I even got this. But yeah, today I'll be reviewing this book and saying my thoughts on it, since I finally trudged and powered through this in a night, finishing what I had left to read. And yeah, and to start off with, this book, of course, like most sci-fi books, is set in the future, and humanity has more technological advance. The setting of the book, yeah, humanity is more advanced, and Sweden's become like the superpower after this cataclysmic war happened, and all the countries are united. But Sweden has become like this, like how the U.S. is in our world today, like the big superpower that everyone knows of. And yeah, during this time period, that humanity's built this super advanced ship, like the most advanced machine ever conceived, and it's called the Leonora Christine. And they select 50 of like the best scientists and people of various specialties to go on the ship, and they're going to this planet or sun system called Beta Free or whatever. And yeah, so these characters go on this ship, and they're only expected to go for like 5 years, but then something bad happens, and that leads to the rest of this book. And it's basic. So yeah, this book is basically about the ship and all the characters and their experiences with the ship and all the issues that they have and all the craziness with it. Because yeah, there is some craziness involved. And yeah, there's a bunch of characters in this book, but the characters aren't really the focus. And most of the focus, the two main characters, I guess, is between the constable of the ship, who's like the head of security, keeping order, basically. So he eventually becomes the real, actual captain of the ship. And Chris Raymond, I think, if I can recall his name correctly. And then there's also the first officer. She's this blonde woman named Ingrid Lindgren, and they have a like romantic relationship, and it like has its ups and downs. It's really goofy. There's that in this book, the characters and their relationships. It's pretty goofy because it just feels like it's thrown in there at times, and that could be a detraction on how the book it comes off as really goofy, but it also gives it some sort of plot besides talking about the ship, because the Leonora Christine is such a ridiculously crazy ship. And Poul Anderson goes into crazy detail talking about the science of this book. Like, if you want a hard sci-fi book, this is definitely like the quote here, talking about how it is the final one. I wouldn't say it's the greatest thing ever, but like the science is crazy. I haven't read too much hard sci-fi, but the science is like insane. He goes into like talking about fields and Bussard engines and the tau equation and how it equates to the ship's speed and how you can't properly approach light and the pitfalls and issues that go into flying at such a speed and momentum. It's crazy. And yeah, if that were and yeah, and that's why the characters are kind of silly but needed, hearing their goofiness and their experiences, because otherwise they just go in depth with the ship and what's happening, and this book wouldn't even be a fraction of the length it is. This book is also short. It's only like 202 pages long. At least my copy is. But yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, in the beginning of the book, it starts off pretty chill. Everyone's excited. A few years go by. They're just going at pretty fast but relatively reasonable speed. And then, like, yeah, something happens, and then with the ship, and they're just forced to be stuck in the ship, and the whole book is their experiences and trying to overcome the issues and with each other and stuff. And like I said, it's the relationships. The whole thing between Lindgren and Raymond is kind of like the main thing thrown in here and there. They're like the main characters of the book, but there really isn't a main character in ways, because it jumps between the characters, and it's more like they're all a part of the big picture of, we're stuck on this ship and we can't get out of it, and just have to live through it, basically, and all the craziness with it. Because as it goes along, this book gets really, really crazy. with their situation they're in, and it just gets like even more crazier and crazier, and things happen that they never would have expected. Like they make a more advanced navigation system that can actually detect planets and stars more advanced than anything that had ever been on Earth in the past. And time jumps because of how they're traveling. Time jumps at such a crazy rate out or outside their ship and things like that. And there's a part with like zero G and yeah, it's just kind of bonkers. The ending especially was like I did not know how the book was going to end like that. It was just such a bonkers ending in my opinion. And also, I will say that the ending of this book was like crazy, and was not what I was expecting. I thought it was gonna be they finally everything was gonna go all great, and it was just gonna seem like a relatively normal story, but it just went like off the rails at the end in terms of like conflict and the ship and everything. And it's like, ooh, they fixed the problem, and then the problem just is still there, and like, and there's new problems. Yeah, and then yeah, so yeah, that's this book, Tao Zero. Basically, this book could be summarized as crazy space travels planned, and it goes completely wrong. And this book is basically an account of these fictional characters' experiences with the ship and everything. And yeah, there is conflict between the characters, and they fight and all that, and break down a lot of issues of like depression, people going suicidal because they've been stuck on the ship for years, and they weren't expecting to be on the ship as long as they were. And yeah, and I could say more, but I don't want to spoil the entire book because, like I said, the ending is like absolutely bonkers. Like, if you want a book that has a crazy ending, this is one of those books. I mean, it's not the greatest ending ever, though, and it's definitely not the best sci-fi ending. Nothing will beat the final page of Solaris, in my opinion. That book, its ending was like top tier, but this one was still like wow, like right before the final chapter of everything happening at the climactic moment, it was like I was not expecting that. Yeah, and it's just yeah, and when you start the book, it doesn't seem like it's gonna be that either. It starts off as a relatively simple story. The characters are all on Earth and they're all excited and optimistic, and then as you get along for the book, their spirits get more crushed, and the characters have to like some of them have to help bring each other up and pick each other up, and it's like crazy. But yeah, the characters are the goofiest part of the story, but they are there obviously because it has to be driven because no one wants to hear about hard science and nothing else in a fiction book. Because yeah, like I said, he goes in depth time about this, about the science of the ship and everything, what's happening to the ship, how fast it's going. The Leonora Christine. And his description at the beginning of the book of what the ship is like is crazy. It just sounds like some really epic, sleek ship. And it's just yeah, it's crazy. But because the book is short, though, nothing, I would say that the actual plot of the story doesn't kick off until around 60, 70 pages into the book. The first 60 pages are kind of just like basic chill buildup. And then once the issue happens with the ship around 60, 70 ish pages in, it's like, oh yeah, now the story starts. And it goes crazy from there. And yeah, and I don't really see much people talk about this. Maybe they do. I don't know, but I thought this book was amazing though. It's definitely not my favorite sci-fi book clearly ever. Solaris is still my all-time favorite, but this book is definitely a contender for being in my favorites. I mean, I still have to read a lot more sci-fi compared to other people, but this book was excellent. I didn't expect it to be crazy good or with hard science. And yeah, the science is definitely hard. This is definitely hard sci-fi because he goes in depth with like the science of everything, physics-based stuff. explaining the engine, the Bussard engine, and how it takes in hydrogen atoms to power up, and fields, and all this other stuff, and how you can't just casually shut off the ship, and the issues, like I said, with light travel or traveling closer to the speed of light. It's just goes really in depth. It's some crazy science. I didn't. And the craziest part is he wrote this book in, yeah, see, in the 70s, and the science is there. The science is so crazy accurate. And I mean, in the time since he probably wrote this book, they probably made a couple big advancements with actually having this kind of technology. But the fact that he wrote, was one of those authors that wrote in such a smart way at the time is crazy. And I guess the book is kind of more unique too, because like I said, before they leave, Sweden's like this has become this major superpower. So it's interesting seeing Sweden as like a major influence on like everything and stuff. And like Lindgren, for examples, I think she was Swedish. Things like that. And maybe the author is. I don't really know much about him, but yeah, it's just an interesting backdrop to have for a book. Because normally it's like it's more other European countries focused, or America as focused as like this major thing, but not really Sweden. So that was kind of cool. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of what I was gonna say for this book. Yeah, I thought there was something else I was gonna say. I don't really know, but yeah, this book was excellent. The characters, like I said, are the goofiest part, but they really drive the story forward. And here's a lot of characters. Oh yeah, and there is a part that's right, because all the different characters from different nationalities there, that breaks up too. They stop caring about that. There's a part early on in the book when an American character gets really pissed off and patriotic about America, and he gets pissed because they're not celebrating the Fourth of July. But yeah, as time goes along in the book, there's that too. People get more involved in their faith and their religion on the ship of their various faiths and belief systems and stuff, and getting depressed because the Earth is probably gone by the time the ending of this book happens. And yeah, that's a thing too. The title of the book doesn't make any sense if you haven't read this book. But after reading this book, the title spoils the ending. I will say that. Or if me saying the Tau equation, because he mentions an equation, the Tau equation, which is about light speed and the Tau and this theory of relativity all thrown in, kind of. It goes into how, like I said, he goes into depth with that because that equation explains the rate and inverse rates of how traveling at near light speed works, and how you can't properly approach light speed, and the shortcomings, like I said, of it. It's just like some crazy stuff. It's like how Solaris is. If you read this book, like I said, the science is really hard. It's really good, but it's something you got to read patiently or look stuff up if you don't properly understand it. I mean, I sort of understood it because I've taken physics classes and stuff, and I've read articles with this kind of stuff, light travel based stuff in it, but warp drive, that kind of thing. But yeah, Tao Zero is an excellent book. I will give this book a 9 out of 10. Like I said, the ending is amazing. The science is there. It's crazy. The ship is really cool. But really, the only thing is that the characters can be kind of goofy, but they're also a major driving point of the story, because otherwise it wouldn't focus the story. So both the ship itself and the characters are both kind of can be at odds at times, but it leads to a really good story, and I really enjoyed this book and can sing praises to it. But yeah, that will be my review of Tau Zero by Poul Anderson. I hope you guys enjoyed my review, and I will see you all in the next video. Maybe I'll do more book reviews or get back into listening to metal music. I haven't been listening to much music lately, but I hope to get back into it. But yeah, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.